say a prayer to ask for the help of the Holy Ghost. Veni Sancti Spiritus, Revelatorum Color Fidei, et Tuia Moris Eis in Macini. Evi Spiritus Tuum Creabuntur. Oremus Deus Color Fidei, Sancti Spiritus, Illustratio Augusti, Dana Hussein Spiritus Rectus Sacre, et Dei Sympathos Versi Beodere, per Christum Dominum Nostrum. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Seat of wisdom, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Pius X, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Okay. Pascendi is a big deal. I talk about it whenever and wherever I can, because it's the longest, most difficult, most important of the encyclicals. It's the most difficult because it gets into philosophy, and it relies upon philosophy. It takes philosophy for granted, and to understand what really makes Pascendi tick, you need to understand the craziness of modern philosophy, the sickness, the stupidity, the blindness of modern philosophy, of which all of the stupid modern universities are full. So, it was Pius X who wrote it, or who commanded it, who oversaw it at least, may well have amended the text with here or there. He was no fool himself, on the contrary. And he appeared in 1907. There were two great lights for the modern world at the beginning of the accursed 20th century, and they were Pascendi and Fatima. Pascendi for the mind, Fatima for the will, you might say. Fatima for devotion and piety, and for history also. Pascendi for theology and the mind. Pascendi breaks new ground because the modern world has broken new ground. The modern world is more stupid than ever, and therefore the church has got to dig deeper to dig out the stupidity, because the stupidity is not so much theological as philosophical, but it has immediate and huge consequences in theology. Put it this way: take a bottle of wine. The glass bottle is worth nothing. Once there's no more wine in it, you just throw it away. Even if it's got, some of them have gold braid, some of them have very beautiful labels. That's all to make you buy the bottle and the whiskey or the wine with it. But once the liquid is gone, the bottle gets thrown away. It's worthless. Nature to grace is something like that. There's no dog or animal in the state of grace. Dog nature, animal nature is not capable of grace. Only human nature is capable of grace. But the human nature without the grace, human nature reaches death, the moment of death, without grace, it throws itself into hell. I say it throws itself because once it's in front of God, and it sees instantaneously, this is the moment of the particular judgment, the moment it sees what it's done, the moment the soul sees how it has rejected God, and how little God deserved to be rejected, it wants to get as far away from him as possible. It can't stand his presence. It throws itself into hell simply to get away from him. And some people will say, it's a mercy, hell is a mercy in that respect, that souls can get away from God. St. Paul says it's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living God. So the church is constantly trying to defend the salvation of souls against the sickness and stupidity of this wicked world, wicked modern world. But it gets more and more difficult. And with Vatican II, the churchmen finally gave up. They built, with rising floodwater, the churchmen built dikes higher and higher. Pascendi is another serious step higher of the dike. It kept the floods out for another 50 years, but in 1958, Pius XII, who was definitely in line with Pius X, Pius XII died, and then along comes John the 23rd and begins rocking and rolling, and everybody says, oh, a wonderful Pope, look at him rocking and rolling, he's in sympathy with us, oh, nice Popey. And that's virtually the end of the church. But of course the church, it's not the end of the church can't end, but the stupidity goes on forever. Let me hand out, or let somebody hand out. The Encyclical is a circular letter to the bishops. So this letter is designed for bishops. So don't be surprised if it goes above your head. Don't be surprised if you have trouble getting hold of it. But we can explain to quite an extent. Let's have a look. Causes and remedies. Okay, there's a complication straight away. Have a look at Pascendi overview, and you've got introduction. There's a couple of I in has gone, but introduction is still legible. 1 to 4, paragraphs 1 to 4. Down the middle, you've got what do you call it? A backbone of figures which correspond to the paragraphs in a particular edition of Pascendi, but it may not be the original. I don't think the original is numbered, so that various editions can have various numbering. So don't count on this numbering corresponding to any edition that you may pick up. It may correspond, but it may not. You've got 1 to 4, and you've got 5 main sections. Introduction 1 to 4. Doctrine 6 to 39. 6 to 39. Causes 40 to 43. Remedies 44 to 56. And then a conclusion 57. So you've got 5 main sections. So of those 5 sections, introduction, doctrine, causes, remedies, conclusion, it's clear that it's clear that the introduction is introducing to the rest of the encyclical. The causes refer back to doctrine, and the remedies refer back to doctrine. In doctrine, we're going to get what the animal is, the causes of the animal, the remedies of the animal. Causes and remedies are obviously relative to doctrine. Doctrine is the heart of the encyclical. It's the big heart of the encyclical. Introduction, so we've got an introduction, huge section on doctrine, huge. That's the center of gravity of the encyclical. It's long and it's the most complicated. It's the most difficult. Okay, then let's subdivide. Then this is where what you've got. You see that doctrine is 6 to 13, 14 to 18, 19 to 28, and that says the heart of the matter, see over. So if you turn over the page, you then get Pascendi, the heart of the matter. Number 2, Pascendi, the heart of the matter. And there you get 6 to 13, the philosopher, 14 to 18, the believer, 19 to 28, the theologian. And then you go turn back, you're still in doctrine, and you get the historian, 30, the critic, 31 to 34, the apologist, 35 to 37, the reformer, 38, and a conclusion of the huge doctrine section. So you've got the layout is the overview gives you the complete picture, but it leaves out the heart of the matter. The second page, the other side, gives you the heart of the matter. Then notice that the philosopher comes first, in front of the theologian, and in front of the believer. So we've got then as subsections under doctrine, we've got, we're now going into blue, under doctrine, we've got the philosopher, we've got the believer, number 2, we've got the theologian, number 3, the historian, number 4, the critic, number 5, the apologist, number 6, and the reformer, number 7. And then a sub-conclusion, a conclusion of this doctrine section. Now, the bottle of wine and the wine. The bottle of wine is worthless, but it's indispensable for carrying the wine to the table. I'm not going to, if there's no glass, I'm not going to get a bottle of wine. Or I've got to have a gourd out of animal skin. I've got to have something which is relatively to the wine worthless, but absolutely worth carrying the wine. Human nature is the bottle, grace is the wine, or the beer if you prefer beer. Same principle. Beer bottles also get thrown away once the beer is gone. If you and I die, or if any soul that dies, if it hasn't got the grace of God in it at the moment of death, it's going to fall into hell. That's what the church teaches, that's what you and I know. Grace is supernatural, subject of theology. Nature is natural. Nature is what's natural to human beings, human nature. And nature is like the bottle. Nature, human nature, is only there in order to carry grace and to bring the human being to the moment of death where he should have grace inside his nature. If he does, he goes to heaven. If he doesn't, he falls into hell. Therefore, the bottle will go with the soul, with the grace to heaven, because the human nature is not despicable in itself, but it's only worth as long as it's carrying the grace. The idea of John Paul II and of Vatican II is man is so wonderful that the bottle goes to heaven regardless. The bottle goes to heaven with nothing in it. All bottles go to heaven. That's the doctrine of John Paul II. He doesn't say it as blatantly as that because he knows that that goes against what the church has taught previously. So he says it in different ways, but a very capable German theologian, Johannes Derman, Father Johannes Derman, was shocked at Assisi, the meeting in 1986, when Pope John Paul II brought together the representatives of 12 false religions and put himself in the middle, senior representative of 6 false religions on his right, senior representative of 6 false religions on his left, and he in the middle, all on the same level, and all holding a pot of flowers. So 13 pots of flowers for the media pictures. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, really, what is a pope doing? Getting photographed with a pot of flowers amongst 12 other pots of flowers from false representatives of false religions. It's ridiculous. Assisi was ridiculous, except in the modern mind. The modern mind just doesn't believe, doesn't give any status whatsoever, any special status whatsoever to Catholic religion, nor did John Paul II. He was the host for all of them together on an equal footing. Because if he had the faith, God knows, in any case, if he had the faith, he didn't understand it. Because if you understand the faith, you couldn't possibly give status or prestige or publicity to the representatives of false religions. If you're the Pope and one of these representatives asks to meet you privately, well, you will meet him privately and answer his questions. But you won't listen to the nonsense that he talks about his false religion. But if he comes to ask you about the Catholic religion, then it's your business to be as kind to him as you possibly can. But you're not going to give the meeting publicity unless he wants publicity. Well, even then, you're going to look after him as a soul that needs to be saved, But you're not going to give him any credit as representative of a false religion, which is what these nutcases do at the head of the Vatican today. So, what we've got then, the philosopher is the bottle. Because today the bottle is crucial. Because if a bottle is cracked, in French that's fêlé. Fêlé. F-E acute, L-E, F-E circumflex, L-E acute. Fêlé. What surprising. Yes, well, if the bottle is cracked or dirty, you could pour in wonderful wine and the wine will be spoiled. A few drops of gasoline, of petrol, and a barrel of whiskey is spoiled. So what any winemaker does is make sure that the bottles in which he's going to put his wine are clean and not cracked, obviously. So the winemaker making bottles is not his business, but supervising bottles is his business. The church has always supervised philosophy because the church has to make sure that the wine is going to go into healthy bottles, sane bottles, neither cracked nor dirty. So what Pascendi, so modern philosophy is dirt in the bottle as never before. Common sense goes a long way in philosophy. Common sense is also in the realm of nature. It's not supernatural, but common sense is that grasp of reality which is natural to human beings. And God gives common sense as a part of nature. But modern man is making war on God. Therefore he's making war on nature because nature comes from God. And therefore he's making war on common sense because common sense is part of human nature. Hence this gender nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Wicked, stupid, crazy nonsense. Men are different from women and women are different from men. There was this driver going down the road in his motor car, and the door opened and his wife fell out. And she was there by the side of the road, and it happens that there was a police car behind. And so the driver went on, apparently oblivious. So the police car came after him and stopped him. Sir, do you realize a woman has just fallen out of a motor car? She's lying by the roadside. Oh, thank you, said the driver. Oh, thank you, what a relief. I thought I'd gone deaf. Women are different from men. Women are extremely lovable. They need to be loved, but they are different from men. And usually with women, it's not the reason that works best. It's not usually any use arguing with a woman because you go straight at her in a masculine way, straight head on in a logical way, and she immediately dodges. And then you just about manage to wheel your cannons around and she dodges again. You can't argue with a woman. She's arguing from emotion. She's not arguing from reason, usually. There are exceptions, but, you know, exceptions prove the rule. So, I mean, it's common sense that women are different from men, deeply different. Of course, we all have human nature. We all have souls to save. We're all equal before God, and that's what matters, really what matters. But in this life, that's not quite the same to say. We are not equal in this life. The man is the head, or should be the head, which does not mean he has the right to be a tyrant. For heaven's sakes, it's common sense that the man should not be a tyrant, but he is the head. He needs to be the head, he needs to behave like the head, he needs to lead. But if you've lost God, you don't know where to lead. Modern man's lost God, and therefore he can no longer lead. So, it's a question of nature and a question of common sense. Now, modern man is violating common sense more and more deeply. Modern man is just like the farmers today have to plow land deeper and deeper in order to pull up another layer of still healthy soil. Because all of the soil above is chemically exhausted with chemicals. So they have to dig deeper to bring up another layer. So common sense has many layers. Today, the very basics of common sense are being dug up and chemicalized and ruined. And people they've got no common sense. They just don't know which way's up. They don't know their right hand from their left. So, the philosopher comes first, because the problem is in the realm of nature. The problem is in the realm of common sense. The problem is not, firstly and foremostly, a theological problem. It's not a problem of God, it's a problem of human nature. Then comes the believer. Then we bring into it something of supernature, belief. What does the modernist think belief is? Oh my. Then we come, only third place to be, well, the theologian is like the combination of the philosopher and the believer. This is the modernist philosopher, the modernist believer, the modernist theologian. This is the modernist in the various departments of modernism. And the three most important are the heart of the matter, which you have on the second side. And then the modernist historian, the modernist critic, the modernist apologist, the modernist reformer. Everything is contaminated. If the bottle is cracked or dirty, every drop of wine is spoiled in the bottle. If you've got a sick mind, which is what modern people have, if you've got a sick mind, everything they think and do is more or less dirtied by their sick mind, is sickened, is sick because of their sick mind. The mind leads. It's in the nature of things. It's just like you take a huge tanker ship. That huge ship is governed by one little rudder, or a fairly big rudder. And that little rudder can take this huge ship either to the Pacific or to the Atlantic or to the Indian Ocean or wherever. That little rudder governs the direction of the whole ship. The mind governs the whole of a human being. Governs. The mind governs. The will has a very important part to play. But it's the mind that governs. Because I can't want anything without first knowing it. Little Miss Muffet comes in springtime. She comes into the dress shop and she says, "Oh, it's springtime." And the assistant says, "Yes, yes, that's right. Yes, yes. Oh, do you know, I feel like spring." "Yes, miss, yes. What do you want?" "Oh, I don't know what I want." "Well, here you are in the dress shop, so maybe you wanted a dress." "Oh, yes, I want a dress." "What kind of a dress do you want?" "I don't know." She's a ditz, okay? She's just a ditz. So she's got no idea what she wants. So what does the assistant do? The assistant's not stupid. She then says, "Well, what colour of dress do you want? Do you want red?" "Oh, I don't know. Blue, green. I don't know." So what does the assistant do? She brings up, so she brings a few specimens. She shows to the ditz a few dresses and says, "Do you like this?" "No. No." "Do you like this?" "No." "Do you like this?" "Oh, yes, yes, yellow, yellow, it's springtime, daffodils, oh, yes." So, but she didn't know what she wanted. She's only going to buy when she has some knowledge of something that she wants to buy. The knowledge has got to precede the will to buy. She can't buy just on a vague instinct of springtime. So the clever assistant, of course, that's what clever assistants always do in the shops. They show you things so that you know and see them, and then finally you've got what is shown to you corresponds to your idea, and your vague idea. The idea becomes more precise, and then you buy what finally you choose. Some idea must go in front of every wish. You can't have a wish without it being preceded by an idea. Therefore, the mind governs. Aristotle says, if you want to philosophize, you've got to philosophize, obviously. If you want not to philosophize, you still have to philosophize in order to prove why you should not philosophize. In other words, either the mind is going to govern, or you've got to make the mind commit suicide before anything else can govern. Which is what modern man does. Modern man is committing the suicide of the mind. He is killing his mind so that he is then free, as we'll see in a moment. The suicide of the mind is the ultimate liberty. I'm no longer governed by ideas. I'm governed purely by wishes. Springtime, an eternal springtime. It's an eternal springtime because I want it to be an eternal springtime. It's deep depths of winter. It's still springtime in my being, is still, and so on and so on. So that's why the philosopher comes first, because common sense, philosophy is nothing but common sense, except that it's like philosophy, good philosophy, is to common sense, like professional to amateur. Now, you can get some good amateur teams, but they don't usually reach the final of the FA Cup, because however good they are, they can't usually stand up to the professional teams. Professional beats amateur. Philosophy, therefore, in order to defend and protect common sense, you need professionals. Common sense is natural, ground-level wisdom, reality, ground-level realism, thinking that corresponds to reality. Common sense is realistic. Common sense is that men are different from women and women are different from men. Modern sense is there's no difference except a few biological differences. Stupid. God designed them very differently and with a marvelous complementarity. But modern people don't want to see that. Therefore, common sense needs to be bolstered and protected by some strong philosophizing. And that's where St. Thomas Aquinas, that's where the church has always philosophized. The church has always watched over philosophy and guided philosophy, told it where it's going wrong, and then encouraged it where it's going right. And the greatest of philosophers is St. Thomas Aquinas. It's a little difficult to understand to begin with. Thomas Aquinas is like riding a bicycle. Once you get the knack, once you learn it and get the knack, you can see what he's after and all of it makes sense. But until you get the knack, until you've had Dad running down the street behind you with his hand on the saddle for a few runs up and down, until you get the knack, you can't ride a bicycle. But St. Thomas Aquinas is professionalized common sense. It's profoundly commonsensical, professionalized common sense. And that's what stops the nonsense of modern philosophers. In Kant, in St. Thomas Aquinas' famous Summa, there are a few articles which already answer the stupidity of Kant, several hundred years ahead. Reality doesn't change. A great master of reality goes into the problems, lays out all the problems, lays out the solutions. It's only the stupidity of subsequent ages that doesn't follow. But there are, and always have been in the church, philosophers and thinkers and theologians that have followed as faithfully as possible St. Thomas Aquinas, because they realized what he did, what he achieved, and what a gift he was. So, we will basically, without quoting St. Thomas exactly, we will give his answers to the philosophy, or which are answers you'll see of common sense. Then the believer brings supernature into it, except that the modernist believer, on this, with a bottle ruined like that, what can belief be? It's going to be cracked and dirty, what is it? And he explains. Then what can the cracked and dirty theologian be? So you've got cracked and crackness and dirt through the rest of all of this. Then you've got the causes of it: pride, ignorance. Ignorance of the truth, pride which wants to be liberated from the truth, liberated from reality. And that's where most people today are living in fantasy. And they're going to have to learn the hard way what reality is again. The causes go back to and then the remedies, and at the top of the remedies, St. Pius X has the study of St. Thomas Aquinas by the seminarians and in the church. The study of St. Thomas Aquinas in the church, inside the church. The churchmen are where the action is. Our Lord says, "As my Father sent me, so I send you," referring to his apostles. The apostles were the bishops. The disciples are the priests, the helpers of the apostles. The church turns on bishops. So the bishops have got to know and believe in St. Thomas Aquinas. The terrible thing about Vatican II, it was all bishops. And a large number, if not practically all of those bishops, will have had some decent seminary at that time, in the 40s or 30s or 20s. Every bishop in the 1960s, most every bishop in the 1960s from anywhere in the world will have had a decent seminary. And yet they all went crazy with Vatican II. That tells you that being fed the right ideas is good, it's absolutely necessary, but it's not everything. You've still got to have the desire, the will to stick with the truth. You must not have the will seduced by all the gewgaws of the modern world, seduced by democracy, rights of man, liberty, equality, fraternity, seduced by the revolution, seduced by science, seduced by technology. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Today we have invented toasters that can play golf. Ah, what a technological marvel. Technology is junk. Junk, J-U-N-K. Science, chemistry, physics is very unimportant stuff, basically. The universities of today are full of unimportant stuff, and the important stuff gets completely forgotten. That's theology. Not any theology, decent theology, true theology. Because the truths in relation to Almighty God concern our salvation and eternity. The truths of chemistry and physics simply concern this lesser world. They have no reach beyond death. Only theology based on decent common sense, held together with decent common sense, only theology takes us through into eternity. Poor modern man, he's not nearly as smart as he thinks, because he's so proud. Pride blinds. A modern man is very proud of his golfers that can play, of his toasters that can play golf. All of that nonsense. Nonsense. Okay. So I think you see, I think you've got the general idea and why philosophy comes first. Okay, now then, look at Pascendi, look at the philosopher. In other words, Pascendi, the heart of the matter, section 6, in this numbering, section 6 to 13. Okay, you notice then that we've got 6 and 7 are principles, and 7 to 13 are application. So, one moment, we'll graduate to red, and we've got principles. That's pi. Greek letter P, that's not 3.14159 and so on. That's simply principles. P stands for principles. You find it occasionally here. And then their application, the apps. What we would today call the apps. Obviously, the application depends upon the principles, because the principles are what you apply. So the application goes back to the principles. So we're zeroing in on the principles. Now, look at the principles, and what you see is negative and positive. That's like, we're going to, hold on, we'll go black. We'll go green, because that's apparently what we do. Green, subsection, subsection, negative and positive. Now that is like clearing the building site. You send in the bulldozers first, and you have to clear the building site before you can start putting up the new building. Modern philosophy is a brand new building. It's sick, but it's a building. It is a building. So modern philosophy can only come after you've done the destroying of the old philosophy. So we've got causes and remedies pointing to doctrine. A reformer, apologist, critic, historian, theologian, believer, all pointing to philosophy. When we look at philosophy, the applications are pointing to the principles. So here we have got the very, very heart of the matter, the principles. And here the negative principles are indispensable before we can get to the nonsense with which they're going to replace the negative principles. Therefore, the heart of the heart of the heart of this great encyclical is just this little section on the principles, the negative principles. The encyclical does not explain the negative principles, but unless you have a handle on the negative principles, you can't understand what the rest of it is. You can't grasp what all the rest of it is about. You can't see how radical, how total this revolution of the church is. Modernism is a total revolution. It's a diabolical revolution. If you read the Encyclical, you can see that Pius X, a pope, does not raise his voice. He does not shout or yell. But you can see from many expressions in the Encyclical that the Pope is at his wit's end. This, he's saying, is just crazy. He says it elegantly, he says it correctly, but again and again through the Encyclical, you can say how anybody can believe such nonsense. Somebody tell me. That's the sort of thing he says. It is very, very grave. This is what the French call the end of the beams, la fin des haricots. It's what we Americans would call the pits. Modernism is the pits. It is the end of the line. Pius X obtained by this encyclical, by his doctrine, by the stand he took, by his teaching, in accordance with this encyclical, he obtained for the Church a 50-year reprieve. Pascendi was 1907. Pius XII died in 1958. 51 years. For 51 years, the Church, despite the crazy modern world all around it, with the floodwaters rising, 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 the dikes were good, the dikes held until 1958. But once good John the 23rd came in, it was over. He said, we're not going to build dikes any longer. The modern world is lovely. Modern man is good. So, knock the dikes down. Floodwaters come into the church. We love you. You're going to drown us, but it doesn't matter. Ah! That's John the 23rd. Did he know what he was doing? God knows. Did he know? But you see, the problem is, the modern world is all around us. The world, how does this Wordsworth say? The world is all around us. Getting and spending we lay. The world is too much with us. Getting and spending we lay waste our powers. Too little we see in nature that is ours. We've given our hearts away, a sordid boon. That's a famous sonnet of Wordsworth. Great God, I'd rather be at the pagans. It moves us not, talking about nature. It moves us not. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Neptune blow his wreathed horn. Meaning, modern man is out of tune with nature. He's out of tune with the nature of God. It's very true. Obviously, it's true. We see a landscape. What do we think? The bulldozers can go in there, they can lay the drains there, we're going to build a suburb here, and we're going to make a lot of money. Modern man looks at nature and that's what he says. Although in fairness, a lot of city dwellers obviously go out on the weekend, they go down to the sea, they go to the mountains. Interesting, they go to the sea and to the mountains because nature's there, especially in a special way. Or they get out of the city. The cities are uninhabitable today. Absolutely inhuman and uninhabitable. So that shows the instincts of men needing nature, needing God's nature, healing themselves to some extent with God's nature, and yet all the principles will they believe in God? No. Will they go to church on Sunday morning? No. They would rather play golf or whatever. So, poor man, he's lost. He's confused and he's lost. And the only people that can get him back on track to heaven are the Catholics. So, we are zeroing in on sections 6 and 7. 6 is the negative, and section 7 is the positive. So 6 is it's a hydrogen bomb. A hydrogen bomb of modern philosophy which blows everything sky high. All thinking, all reality, all truth, all grip of a human mind on truth, it just blows it sky high. And then 7 is what's going to be built in its place. Okay, what is this dreadful, dreadful principle? Beyond the phenomena, things appearing as they appear, all is unknowable. That you have on your paper. And it's got a double underlining. This is the heart of the heart of the heart of the whole encyclical. And unless you understand philosophy, a little of modern philosophy, you can't see what all of the rest is about. People read Pascendi and they say they've understood it and they may think they understand it, but it's very possible they don't really. It doesn't matter. Well, God bless them for trying, and God bless them for whatever they do understand, but it's very possible they don't understand. We're going to have to go into philosophy to a little extent, but it's not possible to go into it completely. It's too much. Let's say here is Frank, a great friend of mine, who always does good service. He's called Frankenstein. Here he is. That's Frankenstein. Okay, Frankenstein is opposite a tree. And the tree is also a well-known feature of... Now, what common sense says is that Frankenstein's eyes, and maybe his nose, maybe the tree issues an odor, Frankenstein's eyes are filled from the tree by the appearance of the tree. It's green of leaves from 2/3 of the way down, and then brown of the trunk the last third of the way down. So the tree is filling Frankenstein's senses. Maybe his nose, his eyes, his ears. He can go, if he's a tree lover, he can go and lick the tree and he can taste the tree. 5 exterior senses which feed the senses. But then, what Frankenstein does is his mind then works. And the mind is different from the senses. That needs to be proved. Modern man typically, stupidly denies it. But the mind is essentially different from the senses, and again, we'll prove it to you in a few moments. But in any case, the mind then picks up this is a tree. The tree is not brown and green. It's coloured brown and green, but it's something much more than just brown and green. The tree, what the tree is, goes to the mind. Feeds Frankenstein's mind. Oh, this is Aristotle Frankenstein. This is not Kant Frankenstein. The tree, and this is actually common sense. If you think about it, what the eyes pick up is only colour. What the ears pick up is only sound. Neither eyes nor ears pick up tree. They pick up brown, green, and the rustling of leaves. That's all they pick up. It's the mind that says something green and brown that rustles and that tastes barkish. It's a tree. It is a tree. What it is a tree. It is not rustling and brown and green. The rustling and the brown and green are the appearances. The appearances as they appear. What's behind the appearances is what the thing is. The senses, this is common sense, the senses read or pick up the exterior, the appearances. All 5 senses pick up different appearances. There's then, says Aristotle, a telephone exchange in my head which coordinates the senses, the data. Data coming in 5 streams from the 5 outer senses. And something hooks up the sound with there's got to be another faculty, which is a hookup faculty, if you stop and think about it, Aristotle was the thinker. There must be a faculty that hooks up the sound with the colour so that this largely black animal, a black and pink thing in front of you, is what's emitting the sounds that are hitting my eardrums. And all the time, my mind is reading the sounds, is reading inside the sounds. What is... give an example in a moment. But in Latin, English is a lousy philosophy for philosophy. English is a lousy language for philosophy. It's the only language that's worse is German. But the best languages for philosophy are the Latin languages, which are closer to the Latin. Latin is the clearest and best. The church has always thunk, think, thank, thunk, sink, sank, sunk. The church has always thunk in Latin, because it's the surest, the clearest, and the noblest. But the heretics always want to get away from Latin. So the new Mass is in the vernacular, the old Mass remains in Latin. Okay, what was I going to put up? That's it, gone. Okay. Oh yes. In Latin, therefore, the word intellect says exactly what it means. In Latin, the intellect is the faculty of intus legere. Lego, legere, lexi, lector. Read. So the intus legere, reader within. So Frankenstein gets these streams of sense data, and he reads with his mind, reads within them that it's a tree. I read within that that was food. I read within that this is a wooden floor. It doesn't look like plastic. I'm judging. The eyes can't say that it's plastic or wood. They've got no idea. The eyes simply report the colour. It's the mind that works on the colour and says it's wood or it's plastic. And so on and so on. Then the intus legere, the reader within, the mind is the inside reader, the reader that reads inside. For instance, there's an example I always use. Some of you may already know it, but don't say anything for the sake of those people that don't yet know it. Because this is to prove the difference between intellection and sensation. The activity of the senses and the activity of the mind. They're two different things. Okay, here's a few lines. Actually, there will be 8 lines in all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 lines, okay? And then a few circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's a lousy picture, but it's a lousy piece of art, but it's sufficient for these purposes, because the mind is going to correct the wretchedness of the picture. Okay, what is that? Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 little circles. Can anybody who doesn't already know what it is, guess what it is? Or see what it is? Anton. You've got it. It's a giraffe outside a window. Okay, now you're laughing. Why are you laughing? Because it was there under your eyes and you didn't see it. You see, the senses, everybody's senses, picked up perfectly well 8 lines and 17 little circles. But what is a different thing. It's the mind that reads within the 8 lines and the 17 circles that it is a giraffe walking past a window. And there could be plenty more examples like that. So you can see there the extus lector, the outside reader reading just the black lines and the senses on a piece of white paper, and then the intus lector, the reader within, picking up what it represents, what it is. So isness is a function of the intellect. Colour and sound are functions of the eyes and the ears, or object. The correct word is object. So that's a clear proof that intellection, activity of the intellect, is not equals not sensation. But of course, modern man doesn't want to think. He doesn't think, he doesn't want to think. Modern man does not want reality because he does not want God. Therefore, modern man has on television all of these stupid programs about how animals are just like human beings and human beings just like animals. So, you get, for the 10 idiots, a nationwide program of an aquarium. And there are 2 dolphins inside the aquarium. And there's a microphone stuck on the outside of the aquarium. And the television questioner says, "What's that, Mr. Scientist?" And there he is in his white coat with his deep spectacles. And he says, "That's Mr. Dolphin saying to Mrs. Dolphin, 'Good afternoon.'" And then another sound comes through the microphone. "Mr. Scientist, what is that?" "That is Mrs. Dolphin saying to Mr. Dolphin, 'Get lost.'" And all the televideos, "Ooh, their dolphins are just like humans, aren't they?" Stupid, 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 but deliberately stupid. Deliberately designed to blur in poor televideos' minds the difference between animals and human beings. Because if we are no different from animals, we haven't got free will, and then we're not responsible for what we do, and we can go down to the tavern and enjoy ourselves whenever we like. So there's motivation behind the stupidity of modern philosophy and modern thinking. People don't care about God, they want to get away from God, and they want to enjoy. And therefore they suicide the mind, they suicide their minds, they deny that their minds are any different from their senses, they pretend it's all sensation just like the animals, or they pretend that the animals have minds, whichever way you cut it. Animals can behave with intelligence, but that's their instincts. Where do the animals' instincts come from? From a very intelligent God, from a super intelligent God. The spider, why does the spider not get trapped on its own web? A fly comes and lands and the fly is stuck. The spider is walking over the web all the time, because the spider either walks only on the spokes of the web, or he only walks on the rings of the web. Whichever it is, it's the other that is sticky. So the fly lands on both and gets stuck by whichever it is that's sticky. The spider is always walking on the one that isn't sticky. Otherwise he would get stuck in his own net. Who planted that intelligence? Who planted that in the... It's Almighty God. Dogs seem to be intelligent sometimes. Horses seem to be intelligent. It's still only and always the instincts, the animal instincts that God planted in them. The animals have what you call spontaneity. In other words, you can't tell what they're going to do, but they don't have free will. If you see a dog coming up to a cold stream with a plate of red meat on the other side of the stream, you can see the dog coming up and going back. Oh, he's thinking. Oh, the dog is thinking. Dogs think. Dogs have minds. It's humility. It's not only us human beings that have minds, the animals also. Why should we think that we're the only ones that... reference back, further back to this one. It's not humility to say that we human beings have minds in that it's not pride to say that we human beings have minds and none of the other animals do. It's humility to acknowledge reality and to take the consequences, which are, since we have free will, we're going to be able to fall into hell or to fall into heaven, and we'd better do something about it. The animals don't have the choice. The animals are going to die. For them, it is curtains when they die. But for human beings, no way. Human beings live on after the soul separates from the body, that's death. The body rots, left behind on earth, but the soul comes in front of the judgment seat of God and is instantaneously judged. It's brought in front of the judgment seat of God by St. Michael, is instantaneously judged. And then it goes wherever God judges it that it's deserved. So, there is the difference between intellection and sensation, and that means that Frankenstein, Aristotle Frankenstein, is constant, and you and I are constantly reading within. For instance, I read within that this is a wall, it's pretty solid, and come 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock, or midnight, I'm not going to try to walk out of the room by doing this. It's stupid, because my mind is saying this is the wall and the door is over there. There's another door here, but that's not going to go, etc., etc., etc. My mind is constantly reading reality. And if my mind stops reading reality, I'm fit for the loony bin. Many, many people today are philosophically sick They're not yet clinically sick, but they're not far from it, because they've got this stupid idea that they control reality. We must move on. So, modern philosophy. I won't go into how and why. Well, that's the key to Pascendi, is how and why Kant, especially, Immanuel Kant, German philosopher, born 1732, died 1804, unless I'm mistaken, the founder of, just like St. Thomas Aquinas used to be behind all of the Catholic universities, prince of all, king of all the Catholic universities, today Kant, Immanuel Kant, is prince of all the modern universities. German philosophy reigns. After Kant came Hegel. Hegel is one of the think masters of Ratzinger, of poor Ratzinger. What did Kant do in philosophy? Now, okay, here is the Copernicus. So Kant said that he wrought, W-R-O-U-G-H-T, he wrought in philosophy a Copernican revolution. What did Copernicus do? Before Copernicus, Middle Ages, the sun went round the earth. The sun went round the earth. So the earth was at the center and the sun went round. Modern ages, today most everybody thinks, because of science, modern science, the gentleman in a white coat with deep spectacles sitting in front of the aquarium and pronouncing upon the noises that come out of the aquarium, he is to be taken seriously, a scientist. A priest, he's good for the women and the children, the daft women and the silly little children. That's all the priest is good for. Okay, modern ages. The earth goes round the sun. Now, you ask today somebody intelligent, which is it? And he will say, there's no way of telling. Father Lindstrom, who knows something of science, will tell you, you can't tell. Unless there was a third fixed point, which there isn't. Everything in all the planets on the moon. Unless there was a third fixed point, so you can't tell certainly which it is. There are other arguments which it is, but the physical and scientific arguments can't determine. But in any case, that is what modern ages think. And it's Copernicus who made the difference. Copernicus switched what the Middle Ages believed to what modern ages believe. Now Kant, that's in astronomy. Kant did that in philosophy. So common sense says, and it is common sense, that it is sheer common sense, that the subject, that you and me, goes around the object. That is to say, this is a plastic bottle for all of us. All of our minds go round this, and all of us are agreed this is a plastic bottle, which is half full of water. In other words, our minds are going around the object. The object is telling our minds what it is. All objects are constantly telling us what they are. We don't try to tell objects what they are. I don't try to tell the wall. Unless I'm crazy, I don't try to tell the wall that it's a door, or the door that it's a wall. Come on. Come on. Yes, a modern man, you can't believe the depth of his stupidity. Anyway, so Kant says, no, from now on, it's going to be the object that dances to the tune of the subject. The object is going to go around the subject. What? So this bottle of half of water it certainly looks like a bottle of water, but I can't tell what it really is. In fact, I decide what it really is. What? I decided it's a cat. What? It's a cat. You don't think so, do you? No, I don't, for sure. Well, it is. I know. I'm a philosopher. I'm a scientist. I have a white coat. I have deep black spectacles. I teach in a big university, and they do. These stupid, stupid people do teach in the stupid, stupid modern universities. If ever you grow up and have children, don't send them to these universities. Absolutely not the girls and not even the boys. The boys should go. If a boy is good at thinking and he likes books, he should go to university because he can make good use of it. But not these modern universities. Unless you can locate a very good professor where he really will learn the truth. But the modern universities seriously believe that they make the truth. They don't submit to the truth, they make it. They don't submit to the truth. They don't go round the truth. They make the truth. The subject makes the object. And the object therefore turns around the subject. How does Kant actually do that? Well, here's Frankenstein, Kant. And there's the tree, the same oral tree. And what Kant says is that beyond the appearances as they appear, the mind doesn't know anything. The intellect doesn't read. The inside reader doesn't read. The inside reader cannot read. What? So the tree provides, he does still believe in the objectivity of sensation. One may wonder why, but he does. Kant still believes that the senses are telling him about reality outside his mind. But for what's inside, that his mind goes towards his mind. He does believe in mind, but it's a completely different mind. It goes towards the appearances, but then it is absolutely blocked at the appearances. It goes no further than the appearances. The mind cannot get inside the appearances. That's why so much of modern philosophy is phenomenist, because appearances in Greek is phenomena. Phenomena. I hope you're all impressed by my knowing some Greek. Phenomena. So the appearances are the phenomena. Kant says we can know nothing the other side of the phenomena. Therefore, the other side of the phenomena is what he calls in German the Ding an sich, the thing in itself. And what he says, what he teaches, is that the Ding an sich, the thing in itself, is unknown. It's just one great big question mark. Who can guess what happened with the successors of Kant? He believes that there's a Ding an sich. He believes that what he says is unknowable. What do you think his successors said? His successor said, how do you know there is a Ding an sich? There isn't a Ding an sich. There are only appearances. And that's what his successor said. And that's why so much of modern philosophy is what's called phenomenist. Because there's nothing other than the phenomena. So Kant refuses the reach of the mind beyond the phenomena. Oh boy. How he does that is in the sheet on the key, which I'll give you, but we're not going to go into it now. It's too difficult and there's too much to say besides. It's interesting. It's a combination of French stupidity, Descartes, and Brick stupidity, Berkeley, Locke, and Hume, all eminent gentlemen of modern philosophy, and stupid as their feet. As stupid as their feet. Come on, those who say, as they say in French. And it culminated in Kant. Kant is the basis of philosophy in practically modern universities. Heaven help us. Beyond the phenomena, everything is unknowable. I think now you get the idea. Beyond the phenomena, things appearing as they appear, all is unknowable. Capital letters, it's the most essential sentence in the whole encyclical. Now, let's start applying that in the domain of religion. But God, author of nature, miracles as such, and external revelation are all beyond the other side of the phenomenon. Therefore, God, miracles, and revelation don't exist outside our minds, or come from outside our minds. But they come from somewhere, therefore they come from inside. That's the argument. Okay, let's have a look. God, the author of miracles. God, the author of nature. Okay. Here is a beautiful sunset, which for many people says God exists. So common sense says that the sun didn't create itself. That beauty didn't just happen. A sane intellect, what looks at these appearances, they're very beautiful. It's not just the eyes, you can't touch or lick the sun, but you can't hear it, but you can see it. And the intellect, the sun, the phenomenon of the sun come to the eyes, and the eye reads within that this is an effect. It's not cause of itself. The mind reads that it's an effect. The senses don't read that it's an effect. The mind reads that it's an effect, and therefore the mind goes through the effect and up to the cause. And this is how you argue from the various creatures of creation that the creator exists. The effects exist, the creative effects exist. They don't explain themselves. They require an explanation. They don't come from nowhere. Therefore, there exists a cause, an ultimate first cause of these effects, like beauty. Beauty does not just happen. It doesn't. Some things are more beautiful than others, and a girl can be very beautiful. She has what the French call la beauté du diable at a certain age, the beauty of the devil. When she's little, when she's 5 years old, she's not yet got that power to attract. When she's 55, normally she's lost that power to attract. But when she's 15, she has so the beauty comes and goes. So the girl does not have the beauty by herself. The girl is not the cause of her own beauty. She has it, and then she acquires it, and then she loses it. So it's not hers by what she is. And of course, when she's old, usually she's not very good looking any longer, usually. So the mind says that beauty, which is a very, very serious reality, it comes from somewhere else. Where does it come from? A source of beauty. Where is that source of beauty? Is it the trees? Well, I never saw her hugging a tree, so I can't believe that that's it. Is it some animal? Well, she likes a dog, but I can't see how the dog would make it beautiful at 15. And not, I mean, where is it? But the beauty is real. It comes and goes. It's real. It needs an explanation. Because it doesn't, it's not just by her being who she is that she's beautiful, because she gains the beauty and then she loses it. So in this case, the mind looks at the sunset. It's beautiful. It doesn't explain itself. It must have a first cause of its beauty. A beautiful first cause. What does Kant say? Kant says there is no way that you have the right to go beyond the appearances. Therefore, all of this is just nonsense. Simply nonsense. So he's wiped out all normal argument of the church from creatures to creator, which is a natural process. Aristotle argued from creatures to creator to the first being, from beings to the first being, and worked out with a very, very fine mind. He worked out many true things about the first cause. He worked out the first cause does exist. He called it the thinking of thinking, the thought of thinking. I forgot. And St. Thomas Aquinas drew hugely on Aristotle. He combined the supernatural wisdom of Augustine with the natural wisdom of Aristotle and made a synthesis which has stood the test of time. And it's not contradicted by modern science, as some people think. So that's the end of what's called theodicy. Theodicy is the churches arguing from creatures to the Creator on a purely natural basis, without bringing faith into it. And the argument is very solid. The argument is absolutely solid. But for Kant, it's wiped out because I cannot know the essence what anything is. Therefore, I can't argue from what something seems to me to be to the first being. Argument illegitimate, wipe it out. So, boom, all the church's natural philosophizing about God, gone. Miracles, same thing. Miracles as such. Miracles as such. Here we've got the 6 pots of water a can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pots of water a can. And here's Frankenstein watching. I'm putting he's losing his chin, besides losing his mind. He looks more like a bird, but that doesn't work. The appearances are of water. And that Kant will admit. The appearances then are, after Our Lady asks our Lord to do what he says, asks the stewards to do what her son says. Our Lord says, go and draw water. They go and draw water, they bring it back, and it's a very good wine. And normally at a feast you give the best wine first, because once people are getting a bit drunk, they can no longer tell the difference. And this time we notice, thanks to our Lord, is the best wine that comes last when all the other wine has run out. But in any case, Peter and any other apostles present who've not yet rotted their minds and still have some common sense, Peter and company say this change can only be done by a God. The one who did this is our Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus, apparently just a normal man. Hey, he must be God. And that's what a miracle does. Because the mind is reading within. The change of the appearances of water to the appearances of wine is not normal. It's not at all normal. Especially since you're going from the lesser to the greater. Therefore, the mind concludes from a miracle, it must be God. There are Lourdes who got the office of miracles. Many miracles attested. They're all in the realm of phenomena. They take x-rays. There's just a complete lack of a hip bone. They take x-rays after the procession of the Blessed Sacrament. The hip bone under the x-ray machine. Scientific. Oh, it's serious. It's an x-ray machine. Oh, yes. I don't believe God, but I do believe x-ray machines. Oh, yes. That's serious. Well, look at the x-rays. No hip bone. Afterwards, there's a hip bone. That's a miracle, isn't it? It's inexplicable. We scientists say there's no explanation. There's no explanation. They can't explain it with their stupid science, or their very limited science. Science is true in its own domain, as long as it doesn't try to get outside its domain and say that we're all descended from monkeys, we were all once branch managers. That's not allowed. Frankly, Pete said Peter's mind reads correctly, it's a miracle. And it's the beginning of a cascade of miracles during the 3 years of our Lord's public life, one miracle after another, culminating perhaps in the miracle of the raising of Lazarus. You know, the whole of Jerusalem knew that he died. All Jerusalem said, why couldn't he? He's done so many miracles. Why couldn't he stop his friend from dying? They're all at Mary's and Martha's, Mary Magdalene and Martha. They're all pretending to sympathize with Mary Magdalene and Martha. Oh, what a shame. Couldn't your Jesus save your dear brother? Didn't Jesus love your brother? They're all mocking, piling on the mockery. They all knew Lazarus. Everybody knew Lazarus. He was a friend of the Romans, a friend of all the Jews. He was a prominent figure. He's dead. He's stinky. 4 days dead. Our Lord waits another couple of days to make sure that he will be stinky by the time he comes. Everybody can sense a bit of the odours coming out of the grave, not very pleasant. And then our Lord comes along and he says, take away the stone. Jeez, he's been 4 days dead. It's going to be horrible. Take away the stone. And then Lazarus come forth. And out of the darkness, this white figure wrapped in death wrappings. Boom. The whole crowd. This is a few months before the crucifixion. Everybody gets the message, but people don't want the message, therefore they don't get it. Everybody sees the phenomena are just phenomena. Extraordinary. This man, 4 days dead, stinking dead, comes out of the grave. Boom. Unwrap him and give him some bacon and eggs because he's going to be hungry after 4 days. It was the last chance for the Jews of Jerusalem to believe. It was a stupendous motive to believe, but the will to believe is not there. So, Peter is honest, and he concludes correctly. His mind reads correctly within the phenomena that this is God. And the apostles the same. But of course, those who don't want to believe, well, the phenomena come in front of them, but they won't believe if they don't want to. So, miracles by Kant are simply wiped out. Again, illegitimate. No, you've got no right. And modern philosophers get up on their hind legs and they pronounce to people what is reality and what isn't. But they judge that this isn't reality, so that's it. So, and then the poor television world, oh yes, university professors, oh yes, oh how serious. Stupidity. And then finally, there's another third example, gives a revelation. So a third example is, this time we have the Galilean carpenter. I hope you'll forgive me for this is the Galilean carpenter. Forgive me for the terrible drawing. There's got 2 feet. And this is again is Peter. And Peter, our Lord, our divine Lord, teaches Peter through his ears this time, especially through his ears, and the mind reads inside the ear, inside the revelation coming from our divine Lord, and the mind reads, this is the teaching of God, and this is teaching which is not optional. This is teaching which I have got to follow. So again, the mind reads upwards to God. This Galilean carpenter, this apparent Galilean carpenter is, my inside reader reads inside that this is God speaking, this is revelation, this is divine revelation. Again, Kant, illegitimate. So miracles, revelation, theodicy, the doctrine, the natural teaching about God, all of it is illegitimate. And Kant sets himself up as the determiner of what is and is not illegitimate for the function of the mind. And it's based on this crazy premise that the inside reader cannot read inside. But the inside reader is made to read inside. It's reading inside all day long. Every word that you're now listening to, you're reading inside what it means. And you're reading inside a series of words to put together some understanding of this encyclical. You're inside reading all the time. Of course the inside reader is capable of inside reading. On what basis? How dare Kant proclaim that the intellect made to intellige That's the verb of insight reading. Made to intellige, can't intellige. It's ridiculous. Simply ridiculous. But there you are. That's modern philosophy. We would go, there's a sheet with which we would go into it. We won't go into it because there are, but I will give it to you so that you can, if you can puzzle it out for yourselves, you're very welcome. Okay, let's have a look at this. But God, author of nature, miracles as such, and external revelation are all the other side of the phenomenon. Therefore, they are all illegible. Therefore, God, miracles, and revelation do not exist outside, nor do they come from outside. But, as given facts, they come from somewhere. They are givens. In my experience and in my life, these are givens. If they don't come from outside, but they do come from somewhere, they must come from inside. Perhaps, well, it's up to you, but I would suggest putting away that sheet of the key because it's a distraction for the moment. Therefore, they come from within. We're moving into the positive principle. We're moving from 6 to 7. So I think you can glimpse now why this principle of Kant, that the inside reader cannot inside read, is an atom bomb or a hydrogen bomb. It just destroys all knowledge of reality that humanity has piled up for the last getting on for 6,000 years, all just wiped out. It's a revolution. Kant lived at the time of the revolution, French Revolution. He's the French Revolution in philosophy. So all of that is just wiped out. All of the past knowledge. The building site is clean. What he's going to now build, what's he going to build up? So, these facts come from somewhere. They can't come from outside, therefore they must come from within. And there we've got the word immanent, meaning in Latin, remaining within. Immanens, remaining within. Now, religion is a form of human life. Life in Latin is vita, vitalis. Therefore, religion comes from man's life within. And that's the principle of vital immanence. Religion comes from man's life within. Life vital, within immanence. So vital immanence is the principle that religion comes from inside each of us. It comes from inside, now you can see, it comes from inside the subject, and therefore all objectivity in religion turns around the subject. That's the Kantian Copernican revolution. And from inside comes everything. So where is it all going to come from? Kant's great mind, Kant's great mind, I'm being sarcastic. Kant's great mind is shut off from outside reality. But the religious experience comes from somewhere. Therefore, where does it come from? It doesn't come from the mind. So where does it come from? It comes from inside, and it's going to come from Kant's great big bleeding heart. Here we are, doom, boom, womb. So Kant's great heart is going to fill his mind. Therefore, what I think comes from what I feel or what I want. My great heart. What you get in the novice order churches, love, 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 love. That's all that's left. Love, love, love. Right? That's what you get in the novice order church, because that's all that's left. The mind is shut off. The mind is completely disqualified. The mind is useless, except as an instrument of the heart. So now, what are we going to get? Let me present it to you. Let me give you the argument. It's incredible, but you're not going to believe this, but this is the argument. Here is the Galilean carpenter. And Kant, let me give him one moment, let me make him a bit taller. He needs to be a bit taller. Here he is. Divine Lord, forgive me if there's such a picture of him. Here he is. This is the Galilean carpenter. The phenomena of the Galilean carpenter. Only the phenomena. The reality behind these things I don't know. But now, there's something about the phenomena of the Galilean carpenter which is particularly vibey. It makes me begin to vibe. So the vibey, because I only know the phenomena, but the phenomena are vibey. So the vibey phenomena make my heart begin to rock and roll. So the heart begins to rock and roll. So here I am, rocking and rolling in tune with the vibey Galilean. And then it's so much so that, and I have such needs, that in accordance with my needs, I vomit all over the poor phenomenon that he is God. So it's my heart that then vomits revelation. Because this, once I have covered the Galilean phenomena in vibey vomit, I then have the object of my belief in front of me. And this is what I need, this is what I want, this came from me, and therefore you've got vibrations. You then have vomit. Pardon me the shocking word, it's a nasty word, it's a shocking word. But we're talking about a shocking stupidity. It really is a shocking stupidity. So I vomit all over the phenomenon. And what I vomit is then a revelation. That's the revelation of God. And then I believe in the revelation. What? So the belief of the philosopher, the belief of the modernist, is belief in his own vomit. According to his needs and according to the vibiness of the Galilean phenomena, all over the phenomena, what then became my God, this is my God, that is the revelation of my God, and this is the God I then believe in. Isn't it wonderful? So modernism is a religion of vomit. It all comes from inside, by its deepest principles. It all comes from the subject. There's nothing objective about it. Any knowledge of the object is disqualified because that's the dignity which is unknowable, according to Kant. Now, let's have a look. It's very, very shocking. As given facts, the religions come from somewhere. Therefore, they don't come from outside, they come from somewhere, they must come from within. Now, religion is a form of life, therefore religion comes from man's life within. It's my vibrating heart which generates religion. Now, all man's life comes from the sense of the heart and from his needs. Therefore, religion comes from the needs of man's heart. If a religion is fabricated by my needs, it's my needs that create the sugar daddy in the sky. And I put him, he's just like a lot of cotton wool, like the clouds. I put him up there because I need him, I want him, I project him. He's a project of my inner needs. Therefore, faith is an inner sense coming from the need of the divine in the subconsciousness. Therefore, faith, where is faith? Faith comes not from outside, it comes from inside. Faith comes from inside my heart, the needs of my heart. Therefore, religion, all the Catholic religion, comes from inside men's hearts. There's nothing objective about it. It's a hydrogen bomb, an absolute hydrogen bomb. The only thing is that since I am the decider of this principle that I make outside reality. What seems outside reality comes in fact from inside. Since I am the decider, there may be times when I decide that the old-fashioned religion is true. For instance, I may say the Eucharist is something I have a great need of and therefore it's true. Or I can say the Holy Trinity. I've got an Irish background, therefore, you know, not the maple leaf, the shamrock leaf. I mean, that's in my Irish bones. Therefore, I need the Trinity. Therefore, I project the Trinity. over Ireland at least. Nuts, absolute nuts. Faith is an inner sense coming from a need of divine in the subconsciousness. What's happened is that excited, 7b, excited by the unknowable beyond the phenomena, but the phenomena of the Galilean are special. By certain phenomena, this sense produces, it vomits, the God that it then believes in. Now, in this sense, God is manifested or revealed. Therefore, revelation, the word revelation means the inner sense is this inner sense, and this inner sense is God revealing himself to the soul. Therefore, consciousness is revelation, natural consciousness is supernatural revelation, and the supernatural is natural. So you're blurring completely the supernatural and the natural. You're wiping out the supernatural. Because what happens is that, attracted by the unknowable, the Ding an sich, the Galilean, he does attract me, he does make me vibe. Attracted by the unknowable beyond the phenomena, faith transfigures and disfigures the phenomena. It transfigures a Galilean carpenter into IHS, the Son of God, and by so doing it disfigures the phenomena because it's making a mere carpenter into God, which the phenomena absolutely don't say. I'm building by myself, out of my needs, the God that I then believe in, with just a minor role being played by the phenomena, although it isn't important. Therefore, all religions come from the inner sense, and all supernature emanated from nature. So the supernatural is entirely natural. So we're absolutely full into the great heresy of naturalism. The mind, one, expresses this sense in primitive formulae. It then works up these formulae into dogmas, and therefore dogmas are secondary. Dogmas simply express my need, and if my need changes, then the dogmas must change. How does the dogma, well, it starts with, I'm in front of the vibey Galilean, and I'm rocking and rolling, and I come up, finally I say, Jeez, is God. Jesus, God. That's a primitive formula. Jesus, God. The Galilean is my God. I project on him my God. So Jesus, God, that's a very primitive formula. With time and with some, that works into God of God, light of light, true God of true God. All the church then develops these dogmas according to the needs of the Christian community. But if the Christian community, as in the 20th century, ceases to need all of this, claptrap, then it will ditch all the claptrap, and it will believe in anything else. It will believe in rockets, it will believe in toasters that play golf, it will believe in anything else. So Jesus God turns into the Nicene Creed. First the Apostles' Creed, then the Nicene Creed, then the Tridentine Creed. The Church naturally, over the ages, works out its dogmas. We in the 20th century need to work out. It doesn't correspond any longer to our inner needs. It is not projected from inside any of us. Therefore, it has no reason for being. There's no need for it, and that's an end of it. So, and therefore, dogmas are secondary. As to the object, supposed object which they express, they are mere inadequate symbols. God of God, light of light, true God of true God. That just doesn't express the transcendent chocolate which I have inside me. No words can express the sublime feelings and emotions and needs going on in my beautiful soul. Excuse me. And as to the subject, they're mere instruments. Jesus, God, is simply a handle for me to get hold of my vomit. It's a handle on my vomit. When I no longer produce that vomit, the handle is no longer any use. Therefore, dogmas need to change according to what's going on inside me, or what's going on inside the community of Christians. Therefore, the modern age no longer believes in all of that Tridentine claptrap. It no longer needs the Tridentine claptrap. It's grown out of the Tridentine claptrap. The modern age is superior to the Tridentine claptrap. Therefore, forget about the Council of Trent and all of its definitions. Waste paper basket. You can see. So therefore, dogmas. This is now 13. Dogmas must adapt to the religious sense, because that's what truth is. And then dogmas must adapt to the believer using them. Otherwise, they are not vital or living. Therefore, dogmas must evolve. Not only must dogmas not evolve, they must evolve. Therefore, the teachings of the church must change with every single age that feels the need to change. And we, in the 20th century, of toasters that play golf, we really need to change. That's it. That's Paul VI, it's John the 23rd. That's Vatican II. This is absolutely Vatican II. I want finally just to present you with subjectivism ravages the church. This error in one word can be defined as subjectivism, because it's the object turning around the subject. The subject is now the center, no longer the object but the subject. Therefore, it's the error of subjectivism which makes the object obey the subject, which makes the object change according to the subject. Let me just introduce you to this sheet. It's really self-explanatory, except some of the sentences are quite difficult. You've got the church over in blue on the left. In the center, you've got the Catholic version of these things, in green for go. And on the right, you've got the modernist version of the same truths. The Catholic truths are listed under 1, 2, 3, and 6. That is actually, 1 is the 4 things laid out in the philosopher. 2, believer, non-Catholic religion, tradition, natural sciences. Those are things laid out in the 2nd section, the believer. And then 3, dogma, sacraments, Bible, inspiration, church, magisterium. Those are things laid out in the 3rd section of the theologian. And then you just have one further addition from the 6th section under apologetics. Let's take and what you've got at each level. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15 layers. Each of the layers, what you've got is the Catholic truth in green, and then what subjectivism does to it. And what subjectivism does to it is tear it completely to pieces. Let's take an example. What is a believer? Unfortunately, the very first, and 7, 8, 9, 11, those numbers correspond to the schema in black and white that you have in front of you. They correspond to the paragraphs in this edition, used here, of the Encyclical. So, unfortunately, 7 is quite difficult. It's crucial, but it's quite difficult. Let's take a simpler one, believer. That's 14. The first layer of section 2, the 5th layer. What is a believer? For Catholics, he is one who submits his mind to objective supernatural truths above it. They're truths which my mind cannot get at, because they're supernatural. Natural truths my mind can get at. For instance, the theorem of Pythagoras. If somebody sits down with me and explains the theorem of Pragerus, I can get it, and once I get it, I've got it. I've understood it, I see it. I can't do that with the Holy Trinity. Either I accept the Holy Trinity or I don't accept it, but it's a great truth which is way beyond my little mind. So a believer is one who submits his mind to objective supernatural truths above it. What does the modernist make of the believer? He's one whose innocence in his big bleeding heart has an experience. That's one of the buzzwords of modernism. Experience. Vital is another word. Living experience. If the modernist doesn't have a living experience, then there's just nothing. That's why in California, on Palm Sunday, the priest once rode up the middle of the aisle on a motorbike in the church. Of course, everybody then had an experience of the holy arriving with, you know, I mean, and the trouble is that next year the poor priest had to think of something else. He might have come in actually with an actual donkey up the aisle, you know. But people have got to have, they've got to get their high. Modern people have got to get their high. If they don't get their high, it's nothing. Catholics, the greatest saints, many of the greatest saints had what's called the dark night of the soul. Zilch, 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 as far as the beautiful chocolate and feelings go. Oh, oh, zilch, zilch. I'm sorry, that's not an English expression. It's an American expression meaning nothing. Zip, zilch, nothing. So, then what are non-Catholic religions? Non-Catholic religions, for 14 also. Non-Catholic religions are contradictors of one or more Catholic truths, and therefore they are all more or less false or invalid, and they're certainly false as a whole. They may still have some truths, but they have a number of untruths, and therefore as a whole they're false and invalid. For the modernists, all other religions are their belief systems, which are all valid insofar as they succeed in arousing man's inner religious sense. So the Buddhist comes to me and he says, I was on a high last night. I had a vision of my entrails. Oh, I can't tell you how sublime it was. Good enough. That's Buddhism, fine. It gives him a high, okay. That's John Paul II. Anything gives you a high, that's your shtick, that's your scene. Crazy. Objective truth is gone. Kant has wiped out objective truth. All that remains is the subject. So the subject is going to stitch the world back together again according to his needs. According to his needs. Not according to reality, but according to his needs. You can go through, that sheet is much easier to go through, although it's difficult by moments, it's much easier than the key to Pascendi, which is quite difficult. That's a technical presentation of exactly how Kant organizes his stupidity. And it's like somebody tinkering with a complicated motor car engine. The human knowledge is quite complicated because human beings are complicated. And human beings are complicated because we're the only creature that is spiritual and material. There are 6 layers of beings: God, angels, men, animal, vegetable, mineral. 6 layers. Man shares with God and the angels spirituality. He shares with animal, vegetable, mineral materiality. He's the only creature that has both. And therefore the being and the action and the knowing, the process of intellectual sensation, is especially complicated in man. And since it's complicated like a very complicated engine, then a skillful engineer can tinker with the thing here, he can tinker with it there and make a complete nonsense. He can ruin the motor. That's what Kant does with human understanding. But he takes truths, this is what's so complicated. He takes things that are true and then stitches them together in the wrong way and makes a complete nonsense of human understanding, human knowing, of human intelligence. I think you should have had the basics to be able to puzzle it out. If you, excuse me, if you care to try, I think you've had enough of the key to be able to puzzle it out for yourself, and I hope you realize how absolutely insane it is. Last remark. The problem with subjectivism is that when Kant comes down to breakfast, he's not going to say that coffee is a cat. His cup of coffee is a cat. Because then he wouldn't have his coffee. He will say, when he comes down to breakfast, the coffee cup is full of coffee. He's not going to say that's poison. Could be, but he's, no. He's going to say, that's coffee. He will sniff it, he will look at it, he will taste a bit, maybe, if he's in any doubt. And of course it's coffee. And then, so when he chooses, he's going to be objective. And therefore you can think that he is objective because he acts according to common sense a good part of the day. So he's going to, after his coffee, he's going to shave with the appearance of his beard. He's then going to get into the appearances, the phenomena of his car. He's going to crank the car with the appearance of an ignition key. He's going to back the car out with the appearance of the garage. He's going to drive the appearance of the car down the appearance of the road to the appearance of the university, because he makes his money at the university. He's going to sit in his important professor's chair at the university, but once he's in that chair, he's going to spout nonsense, because that's what makes money. Because modern man wants to hear nonsense. Because modern man wants to liberate himself from God and from reality. Therefore, Kant will be paid richly to come to the appearance of the university, teach the appearance of his students, and teach them that their minds can't function, that their minds can't grip reality. Mr. Professor, if my mind can't grip reality, why do you think I can grip your lecture? Shut up, you. Kindly appear to shut up. It's nonsense every step of the way, but it deceives. Give you one last example. I asked Cardinal Ratzinger to recite the 2 times table, and he says to me, 2 times 2 are 4, 2 times 3 are 6, 2 times 4 are 8, 2 times 4 are 9, 2 times 5 are 10, 2 times, etc., all the way through to 20. And everything else is correct. Mr. Ratzinger, yeah, that's true, but 2 times 4 are not 9. Oh, yes, they are. No, they're not. 2 times, what did I say? 2 times 5. 2 times 5 are not 9. 2 times 5 are 10. No, he says. 2 times 5 are 9. What makes you say that? I have a transcendent experience that 2 times 5 are 9. Well, Mr. Ratzinger, in that case, why do you think 2 and 2 are 4? Because I have a transcendent experience. So you see, based on transcendent experience, he can fool you by getting easily most of it right. And if he actually had said, if he got it, the whole thing completely right, I could have thought he was objective. I could have thought he was in line with the truth. Thanks to his getting one thing very wrong and insisting on it, I realized that his whole system rests not on rock but on plastic. He's not building on the rock of reality, he's building on the plastic of his experience. He's a subjectivist. And that's what he is. And that's how he can come to reinterpret the incarnation as being not God coming down to man, but as man rising up to God. What can you do? So, and as I say, the mass of Catholics want fantasy instead of reality, because fantasy is much less demanding, and they're going to keep the illusion of being Catholics. Oh, it's great. I can go on thinking that I'm Catholic, whereas in fact I'm nothing of the kind. I'm a fantasist, I'm a subjectivist, I'm a modernist, but I can kid myself that I'm a Catholic. Wow. Wow. Now I hope you see why Pius X says this is the end of the road. This stuff is the end of the road. And sure enough, it was held at bay for another 50 years, until 58, but then the dikes were down, the dikes were dismantled, and the floodwaters flooded into the church, and Catholics have been drowning, glug, 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 ever since. Good luck, my dear friends. I hope you've got hold of something. Thanks very much.